Okay guys, in this video I want to share a story with you. It's called Why WeWork Went Wrong. The office space startup to the tumble when investors tired of its messianic CEO and lack of profits. But why were its so backers, the house of salt among them, so keen to pour billions into its first place? The article is by Matthew Cyclin. It's so easy to focus on Adam Newman, the tall, long-haired, barefoot, meat-banning, weed-smoking, tequila-drinking, Kabbalah-studying, experimental, school-opening, paltrow cousin-in-law of the founder of New Deposit's chief executive officer of the We Company, the real estate company that dropped work from its name after it bought the copyright for the word "we" from Newman himself. Newman's ambitions were as lucrative as his persona. Rather than just renting desks, Fast Company reported in January, the company aims to encompass all aspects of people's life in both physical and digital worlds. This includes expanding the WeWork model to residential housing and education. Before Newman had even started the company, we had envisioned WeSleep to WeSane to WeBank. While none of these will ever be realized, perhaps he was right to think beyond the office space subleasing, a company as he had built in his crisis. Everything went wrong for WeWork soon after its publicly filed documents for initial public offering of shares on August 14th. 6 weeks later, Newman had voted to remove himself as CEO job and given up the majority control of WeWork's stock. The company proposed valuation had fallen by more than half, and the IPO had been called off entirely. The failed IPO and the company's subsequent takeover of SoftBank, its largest investors, were both facilitated by the public expose of long-known information. WeWork was losing a ton of money, and its projection of size of the markets for shared office space, up to $3 trillion, were wildly optimistic. It counted anyone who worked at a desk in the American city where there were WeWork as a potential member. In non-US cities with WeWork, the estimated applies to anyone with an office job, and its corporate culture and strategy were completely in hock to Newman and his family's bizarre ideas and whims. The company's business model had been known to expensive and have little path to profitability since at least 2015, when BuzzFeed's first published documents WeWork had used to solid investors. Norman weird behavior, meanwhile, had been part of the sales pitch from the very beginning. What seemed to make this year's WeWork stories different and more damaging was the addition of the alleged self-dealing and self-enrichment by Newman to the core model of leasing office buildings, transforming them into shared workspaces, providing free beers to tenants, and then counting on a rotating cast of freelancers, venture-funded startups, and some larger corporations to pay rent that could be as short as a month at a time. But Newman's propensity to sell stock and lease buildings he partially owned back to WeWork wasn't news either. It was exposed by the Wall Street Journals earlier this year, and before the trouble started. The more skeptical sections of the financial press has always had WeWork's number, even when the company's footprint and valuation were soaring. In 2017, the Wall Street Journal said that Newman's correspondent Elliot Brown described a $20 billion startup fueled by Silicon Valley pixie dust. It was all there. Casual appearance of office space, subleasing into something more like software. He had told investors they were buying into a physical social network, as well as the doubts from anyone who knew about his actual business, real estate. The company was worth $20 billion, let alone the $47 billion it was valued in its last round of private funding, let alone the more than $100 billion that Morgan Stanley reportedly told the company it could be worth. What happened since August wasn't a consequence of the kind of investigative journalism that felt Theranos as the long forehead public tumble of the Uber. It was more a kind of fruit that emanate from the Twitter every day so often. Widely known facts were re-aired in a new climate. What was once amusing or somewhat confusing was now in a new light, merely horrifying. But this time, instead of hopes of teenager hurling morality condemnation at a mediocre TV show, it was middle-aged men condemning a 220-page financial statement on Twitter in real time. Like filmmaker caught in an unaired critical storm, WeWork and Newman tried hard to swim against the current. There was eventual partial compromise to stem the tide of the ill will. When Newman finally returned to WeWork, the $6 million or so he had got for the name We, but that didn't help the valuation. Nothing did. Bankers proposed cutting the company's value by more than 50% until the capitulation finally became. By 24th of September, Newman was out of his job and the WeWork show was pulled off air. There would be no doubt, no wearing of computers at NASDAQ, New Jersey servers. Now the company is a majority owned by SoftBank in its valuation of $8 billion, well short of the $13 billion that's been put into it. Past exposes of WeWork's cookie business practices and sunny projections had relied on documents distributed to potential venture investors. When WeWork turned to the bond market last year to borrow hundreds of millions, it had to deliver more than revelations. What the investors' documents showed amid of the financial profit projections was that in 2017, WeWork had lost $883 million despite having some $886 million in revenue. A lead to the Financial Times revealed that in 2018 the company managed to lose $1.9 billion on some $1.8 billion in revenue. Throughout all this, Newman was being Newman. His private jet trips may have involved some transportation of marijuana across international borders. His wife may have fired employees for their bad vibes, and the company had ended meetings announcing layoffs with performance by a member of the Run DMC. But Newman's leadership and loose corporate culture wasn't suffering in the Maldives. Guitar-shaped houses and expensive experimental schools, according to one lawsuit. A former WeWork employee alleged last year in a civil case that she was robbed or forcibly kissed at a corporate event, including at an alcohol-fueled WeWork summer camp, and that her complaints resulted in little attention from the human resource management and little to no action against her alleged assaultants. She was later fired. The sexual harassment and assault of an employee did not happen in a vacuum. The employee's complaints read, they were products of part of the entitled frat boy culture and permeates WeWork from the top down. The former employee specially mentioned that during her job interview with Newman, he served shots of tequila and the company manages an executive heap immense pressure on employees to attend after-work events and place a premium of employees' participation in the parties that WeWork sponsors. The company said she had been fired for poor performance. What transferred WeWork from an investor's darling into a nightmare didn't belong to any predictions, boom and bust model, and it wasn't about prosaic investors' concern that future cash flow. According to the great Bloomberg columnist Matt Levine, WeWork's downfall could only be explained in abstract terms. Something about what happened and the speed with which it occurred seemed unknowable. Levine pointed out that its peak valuation, WeWork had worth almost half of the entire value of publicly traded US real estate investors' trusts. Nobody gets into venture capital because the best case scenario is doubling the money. Such returns would be far too small. For WeWork, maximal office landlording success would be kind of disappointing, wrote Levine. More ambitious schemes, more required. If you could somehow build a company that included micro apartments, software, and schools, then sure, why not? Maybe it really would be worth $100 billion someday. Or at least, if people as smart as WeWork venture capital investors bought into this, then surely less sophisticated asset managers that buy into IPOs would too. That's not how things worked out. Private investors are supposed to be long-term thinkers, especially SoftBank, which claims it wants to create an ecosystem that will continue to grow for at least 300 years. But WeWork's investors folded quickly, suddenly demanded from the company the focus and discipline critics had been saying was missing for years. Maybe some of the more dour and animus asset managers expect the CEO of a nearly $50 billion company to act like one, while his venture capital investors wanted him to maintain the overwhelming ambitious lifestyle. But it was precisely those investors, SoftBank and Silicon Valley venture firms benchmark that forced him out. What was strange was they knew better than anyone else what WeWork really did and needed to do in order to raise money. Even Levine admitted to being a little stumped. WeWork investors, particularly SoftBank, were there because of Newman's upside, his ability to sell wild visions of WeWork as a transformative company that can dominate the world and justify a $47 billion private valuation. And now, never mind, of landlords.